70-year-old Lee Jae-kyo is a successful poet who never got married. But when a 17-year-old girl comes into his life, he falls for her and he falls hard. How far will he go for his love? We will find out in this movie. Before we begin, spoilers ahead. Surrounded by hundreds of books, alone in his study room, sits the national poet, Lee Jae-kyo. As far as he is concerned, there was nothing in his life, except books. He was so busy with his work that he didn't notice when time flew by. And now he is old and all alone, thinking about the gone time that he could have used otherwise. Lee is only his assistant to look forward to. The 30-year-old Seo Ji-woo, who takes care of all his needs. From getting groceries from the market, to cleaning the house and making food, he takes care of it all. Ji-woo has also recently published a book called The Hurt, which is a bestseller. One day, when Lee returns home, he sees a young girl sleeping in his veranda. He looks at her for some time, and then Ji-woo wakes her up. She says her name is Han Yoon-gyo and quickly goes away, using the ladder which is resting against the boundary wall. In the evening, Ji-woo tells Lee that he will be busy for some days, as he has got an offer to write a book. So if he wishes, he can hire Yoon-gyo to do the chores as she wants to work and she stays nearby. Without any hesitation, Lee agrees to hire her. Next day, Yoon-gyo comes to Lee's house. She is a chirpy, lively high school student. As she works in the house, Lee keeps looking at her. With time, they started sharing about their lives. She also started coming twice a week, instead of once. One day, Yoon-gyo arrives at Lee's house, drenched in the heavy rain. She has fought with her mother, and wants to stay at his place for the night. In the morning, when Lee wakes up, he sees Yoon-gyo sleeping in his bed beside him. He looks at her intently, and then notices a tattoo on her neck. He feels a strange attraction in her, as if he sees his lost youth in her. Just then Ji-woo arrives in his car. Lee hurriedly rushes down in his study room, so that Ji-woo thinks that he was there the whole night. Seeing Yoon-gyo come out of Lee's room, wearing his loose clothes, Ji-woo is surprised. After that, Yoon-gyo makes sandwiches for breakfast. Ji-woo says that Lee doesn't like having bread. On this, they start arguing. But when Yoon-gyo serves a sandwich to Lee, he readily accepts it. This seems strange to Ji-woo. He tries to talk to Lee, and tells him such closeness with a high school student isn't good. But Lee ignores him and says that he doesn't know what he is talking about. The trio go hiking. There, Ji-woo forbids Yoon-gyo from coming to Lee's house, but she doesn't listen to him and ignores him. Angrily, he goes near to threaten her. A mirror, which was given by her mother, slips and falls down the rocks. It was the first gift which her mother had given her, and it meant a lot to her. Yoon-gyo starts crying and Ji-woo tells her to not create a scene on such a trivial issue, and that he will buy her a similar mirror. But she cries and says that she doesn't want another mirror, but the same one. Then Lee risks his life and fetches the mirror from the ditch. The next day, to express her gratitude, Yoon-gyo wants to get Lee a tattoo similar to hers. Initially, Lee hesitated, but later gave in to her request. Now Lee is lying on Yoon-gyo's lap and getting his tattoo made. Lee tries to touch her and suddenly he looks in the mirror. He sees a young man in his reflection. This is Lee's desire, where both of them are very happy. At that moment, the desires of his youth ignited in him once again and he started to pen down his feelings. He started writing a book on Yoon-gyo, a love story titled In Her Name. On the other hand, Ji-woo is getting frustrated, as his works are getting rejected. He asks Yoon-gyo to bring him some medicine. When she reaches there, he blames her and says that she is doing wrong with Lee. He tells her that she should stay away from Lee and that the mirror incident that happened was a drama. Actually, Ji-woo is jealous that Lee is getting attached to Yoon-gyo. He has been with Lee for so many years, but Yoon-gyo is now taking his place. At this, a scuffle ensues and Yoon-gyo gets injured on her chest by her school badge. She gets angry and says that an engineer can never understand any emotion. Ji-woo is shocked hearing this. He sees blood on her shirt and gives her a tissue. He also notices the tattoo while she cleans herself. He asks how she knows that he is an engineer, at which she says that Lee shares everything with her. She then sees a copy of The Hurt lying on the desk, and asks Ji-woo if she can read it. She proceeds to drag a box near the desk, but Ji-woo stops her and says that Lee doesn't like anyone messing with the study room. They again scuffle and the box falls down. Yoon-gyo runs to tell Lee about this. While collecting the papers in the box, Ji-woo sees the manuscript of the book that Lee is writing on Yoon-gyo. Then he quickly puts the box in its place. Later, Ji-woo tells Lee about the next day's meeting. Yoon-gyo also starts pestering him to go to the meeting, at which Ji-woo angrily snaps at her saying that it is a high-level meeting, and to stay within her limits. Lee stops him and says that after school, both of them can go elsewhere. The next day in the meeting, Ji-woo notices that Lee is lost in his thoughts because he is excited to go out with Yoon-gyo. He is in a good mood, and shows off his tattoo, similar to Yoon-gyo's. Ji-woo is even more jealous after seeing this. After waiting for an hour for her school to end, Lee takes Yoon-gyo for dinner. He laughs with her and enjoys her company as if he has become 17 once again. On the other hand, frustrated with the nearing deadline for his novel, and envious of Yoon-gyo, Ji-woo reads Lee's manuscript and steals it. Few days later, the head of the literary committee pays a visit to Lee. He tells him about Ji-woo's new novel, Yoon-gyo, which is getting popular. Hearing this, Lee rushes to the box and sees that the manuscript is intact. Then he goes to a bookstore and reads the novel. Each word in the book is his. It was his writing. The next day, Ji-woo comes to meet Lee. Seeing the book on the table, he realizes that Lee now knows the truth. He tells him that he stole his writing because Lee would never have published it in his own name, and such a beautiful love story would have collected dust in the box. Lee is livid and asks who gave him the permission that he stole his writing. He also tells him that he never had the talent for writing. We come to know that the Hurt novel was also written by Lee, which he gave to Ji-woo. And it is because of that Ji-woo has such recognition. Ji-woo says that he is fed up with being his shadow. He further says that a story of a 70-year-old man and a 17-year-old girl doesn't make a love story, but a dirty scandal which will only cause him dishonor. Hearing this, Lee loses his cool and starts slapping Ji-woo. Yoon-gyo is standing and watching all this. She sees Lee in such a rage for the first time and runs away. That very evening, Yoon-gyo comes to meet Lee, but all his doors and windows are locked. Lee understands that it is impossible to get some things. Just like he cannot get back his lost time, he cannot fulfill his dream of being with Yoon-gyo. Seeing the book on the table, Yoon-gyo starts reading it. She wonders how Ji-woo knows so much about her. After school, she goes directly to Ji-woo's apartment. She asks him whether he wrote the book and how he knows about her tattoo. Ji-woo realizes that she doesn't know the whole truth. He tells her that he has written the book and Lee told him about her. Ji-woo drops her home, and she thanks him. Later, Ji-woo gets the news that Yoon-gyo novel has won the literary award for the year. Ji-woo is surprised. For the award function, Lee is invited as the chief guest. No one expected Lee to come because he never goes to any award function. But today, he didn't come for Ji-woo, but for his own novel so that he could explain to people the real meaning behind it. He gives a heartfelt description of Yoon-gyo, while Ji-woo listens to him with his head lowered. Winter has arrived. Yoon-gyo comes over to Lee to wish him on his birthday. This time Lee opens his door. In the evening, they begin celebrating his birthday by cutting a cake. Ji-woo also arrives to wish him and sees them celebrating. He sees the cake and comments that Lee is diabetic. As he is leaving, Lee stops him and they have their dinner together. Before going to bed, Lee hugs Yoon-gyo, and she kisses him on his forehead. Before leaving, she goes to meet Ji-woo in the study and they get drunk. At midnight, Lee hears some noises coming from the study room and goes to check. He sees them making love. Yoon-gyo still thinks that Ji-woo wrote the book for her and he has feelings for her. Seeing them, Lee becomes furious. He punctures the tires of Ji-woo's car, and detaches the steering wheel of his own vehicle. In the morning, when Lee hears the roaring of his vehicle, he realizes what he has done. In a few moments, Ji-woo loses control of the vehicle but misses a big accident. After going to the mechanic, he comes to know that someone has deliberately messed with the steering wheel. He understands and rushes to Lee's house in a rage. But this time he drives rashly and gets in a big accident and loses his life. On this side, Yoon-gyo gets a voice message from Lee saying that he has killed him. She bitterly cries hearing this. After that day, she never went to meet him. Time passes by and Yoon-gyo grows up and starts attending college. She is now mature. One day, she is reading a certain page from the book Yoon-gyo. After so many years, she goes back to Lee's house. The house reeks of alcohol and stale food lies on the table. She goes to Lee, who is sleeping in his study room. She tells him to forgive her. She was a fool to have never understood that the little moments that they shared, the feelings that they never expressed, can never be understood and written by another person, however much you explain it to them. Especially to him, for whom all the mirrors are the same. How would he have understood these things? Yoon-gyo was always yours, that novel was written by you. She further thanks him for making her so beautiful. Lee was hearing everything, but didn't turn towards her. After that, Yoon-gyo says goodbye to him and goes away. Lee also expresses goodbye through his moist eyes, because even though Yoon-gyo knows the truth now, it is not possible to change things as they were before. With this the movie ends. Thank you for watching this video. Please, like, share, and subscribe for more. Here are other videos that you may like.